Today is Elul. Elul is the Yom Haledes, the birthday of the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov first, and then the Alter Rebbe.
There's a big party tonight, Rebbe.
Well, Elul is not a party. Elul is a very serious day, and Elul is the beginning of all of Chassidus, because without the Baal Shem Tov's neshama coming into the world, and without the Alter Rebbe's neshama coming into the world, we wouldn't have Hasidism. So it's a very monumental day, and I'm going to take a few minutes just to talk a little bit about this. Before the Baal Shem Tov was born, the overall Yiddishkeit, Judaism in Europe, in that part of the world, in Poland, and in that region, was very depressed. And that's because there were the two things that took place that really made the Jewish people feel very, very down, very broken, and gave up. They had a big, we spoke about this the other day, they had a breakdown in their emunah. And what happened is, was something physical, with the Chmielnicki pogroms of 48 or 58, and 49, 59. Those were very, very bad pogroms, and many Yidden were killed. That was devastating. The next terrible thing that took place was more on a spiritual level: the false messiahs, Shabtai Tzvi, Frank, and different groups that proclaimed to be Mashiach and misled the average Jew, and it was so alluring that even great rabbis, Rabbonim and Tzadikim and Talmidei Chachamim went along with these false messiahs in various ways. And this was devastating to the Jewish community, that there could be an individual or a group of individuals who seem pious and honest and integral, have integrity, and nevertheless they mislead people. So these two things led to a depression amongst the Jewish people. When the Baal Shem Tov saw this, the holy Baal Shem Tov, and by the way, the Baal Shem Tov's name, Baal Shem Tov, is not unique to him, because there were already people who were called Baal Shem Tov 100 years before that. But Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Chasidic movement, he realized that there was a very big schism between the regular people and the Talmidei Chachamim, where the regular people were honored and appreciated, and the Talmidei Chachamim, and the regular people were considered ignoramuses and misfits and everything else. And the Baal Shem Tov, so he saw a double problem. One is spiritual and physical devastation to the Jewish people, and number two, an overall demeaning of regular Yidden. And the Baal Shem Tov said that this is not going to get the Jewish people to rebuild and to go with strength and continue through the hardest of times. And the Baal Shem Tov then discovered, revealed the essence of all of Torah. And the essence of Torah is the neshama, right? The soul, the neshama. And the Baal Shem Tov said that we have to serve Hashem with the neshama, and in a simcha way, a way of joy and happiness. And this was originally, as you know, not accepted by the Orthodox community, what today you would call the Orthodox. In those days it was called Ashkenaz community. And the Baal Shem Tov slowly but surely taught his students, and particularly the Maggid of Mezritch, who taught other students, one of them being, the youngest being the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Tanya. And from there came about Nachman Breslov and many other tzaddikim, the Reb Noam Elimelech, Reb Melch, on and on and on, the Slonemer, and the Kosover, Many of the Hasidic groups you have today were originally Talmidim of the Maggid, or they were students of students.
Bnei Yisachar?
No, the Bnei Yisachar. Yeah, Bnei Yisachar was a student. Not. I don't believe he was a direct Talmud of the Maggid. He was a student of a student. There are very few.
I think he was a student of the Chose.
That's right. Thank you. And the Chose himself, I don't believe, was a student of the Maggid. He was a student, I think, of Elimelech. But anyway, only really, I told you this once. You can really only find 4 Hasidic groups today that are direct from the Maggid: Breslov, Karlin, Chabad, and from the Maggid you would have
Tzernobel?
What?
Tzernobel?
And the Tzernobel, yes, absolutely, and also the Slonimer. The Slonimer really, they weren't called the Slonim; they were Reb Avram Kalis. You see, the Slonimer. No, they came from the Lechovitcher. Reb Mordechai Lechovitcher is the father figure of the Slonimer Hasidim. So they weren't called Slonim; they were Lechovitch. But
I think that Tzernobel was sort of a separate line because the Meor Einayim himself was connected to both the Baal Shem Tov and then later the Maggid.
Yeah, okay, fine, but right, okay, but he goes the Meor Einayim and his son and they all go back. They definitely they all go back. So anyway.
What when you say direct descendant of the Maggid, what do you mean?
I don't mean descendant. Disciple. In other words, let's say Baviv Chasidis. Baviv Chasidis, there was no Baviv Rebbe during the time of the Maggid. The Baviv go back to Reb Naftali of Ropshitz. And the Ropshitzer goes back, I think, at Melech Milazinsk. And Melech Milazinsk goes back to the Maggid of Baal Shem Tov. You understand?
Right.
And so you have with most, yes. What, Moshe?
She said, Chabad, Breslov.
Chabad, Breslov, Stolen, and Tzernobel are the 4 ones that their names today you find 200 years ago. I said Slonim, for example, you don't find that the father figure of the Slonim movement was Reb Mordechai of Lechovitch. So he was called the Lechovitcher. He wasn't called the Slonimer. So, if you want to kind of... But the Slonimer was, I don't know, either a son, not a son, a student of the Lechovitcher, I think. So when I meant the 4, I meant the ones that you could, the same Tzernobler of then is the same Tzernobler movement today. And so with Chabad and so with Breslov. Breslov stopped having Rebbes after Reb Nachman, but Reb Nachman was the Breslover Rebbe. So the Breslover movement today attribute, of course, their movement to the Reb Nachman. And so is also with Karlin Stolen. And in fact, Karlin Stolen really goes back to Reb Aaron HaGodel, I believe. No, Reb Aaron HaGodel, yeah, I think Reb Aaron, I'm not sure, Reb Aaron HaGodel, Reb Aaron HaGodel, which was a Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, I believe. I think even before the Maggid. Anyway, let me continue. So, the Nakuda is that every new thing in a community is always, fraught with skepticism. And it was that way too. And we all know the difficulties that many of these Hasidic Rebbes had, where some of them were imprisoned and other ones were beat and the other ones were humiliated and on and on. But at the end of the day, it came full circle where although today we still have, the Litvische movement and we have a very strong Litvische movement, but the Rebbe said, and I could say from researching, there are very few Misnagdim today. There are some, but there are very few. Misnagdim in the sense of opposing Chassidus in a vehement way, where they wouldn't eat their meat and they wouldn't be meshadich with them. I don't know if there's anyone like that. And if there is, you can count them on your fingers. And the Rebbe explained many times that the concern of the Misnagdim at that time was that this new group are like the false messiahs. So they were very concerned. And step back for a second, you can understand their concern. Here was a Shabtai Tzvi with a long beard telling you about this and this, davening 3 times a day, and he tells you, and they find out that he's a farce, he's a liar, it's nonsense, So here comes along a Baal Shem Tov and Chasidic Rebbes, and all of a sudden they're davening with fervor, and they're shaking, and they're screaming, and they're drinking bromf and mashke, and this and that. It's like, this is not the, one second, this is not the Yiddishkeit that we were used to in Ashkenaz. Now, Ashkenaz, Germany, and that region, as it is, are yekis. Everything's very proper. But I'm saying, even if you didn't live in that region, let's say you were in Poland or in Russia and you came from Ashkenaz descent, you also felt that way. I just came from Shul, and the Baal Kodesh, he was definitely in Eretz Yisrael again. He laned nicely. I happened to get an aliyah for Chayel, and I saw that he wasn't wearing a gartel, and he looks like a chassid. And he's not a chassid. I'm convinced that he was a litvak, because the litvaks in Yerushalayim, that's the way they are. They look like chassidim, but they don't wear a gartel, which that's their mimic, whatever. So what I'm saying is that these nuances, what?
The Prussian.
The Prussian, yeah. Again, I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but he definitely felt like from the Prussian. The Nakuda is that it was, you have to understand where they're coming from. Where they're coming from is that this is not minig aviseinu b'yodeinu. It's not the way we celebrated their Judaism, So you guys have to prove yourself. And the Rebbe, in explaining this whole phenomenon, Hillel, 1 second. In explaining this whole phenomenon, the Rebbe said that we did prove ourselves, because 300 years we've proved ourselves that we're Shomer Torah mitzvahs. We go to shul 3 times a day. We answer the same Baruch Hu and Amen, and right? And the result is that Chassidim and Litvish have been mishadech and eat each other food, and pretty much it's it's all all in one chong pot, to use the expression. There's different minhagim and different tefillas, but and today I don't have to tell you, but even the Ponovich, which is like one of the top yeshivas of the Litvisha, they sing the Alter Rebbe's Ningen. So that is not such a big chiddush anymore, but they sing the Rebbe's Ningen Somalachom Nafshi. I mean, if Rav Shach was alive, I don't know how he would manage. I think he would go, sorry to say, he would go down to his grave, not at 102, but at 80 years old. I mean, it's like they were so opposed to Lubavitch and the Rebbe, and they're singing Somalachom Nafshi. So what does that tell you? So you could say, oh, you know what? It's and some Misnagdim probably would say, those that are left, they would say, well, we're in such a bad shape today, state, that we don't have the pride. It's like someone called me Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos. I put out a clip this week about Rabbi Yoel Kahn knowing Shas, because I heard that actually from someone who moved to your neighborhood, to Dolev. Mr. Rabbi Fasten, you should know him. You know him? He davens at Rabbi Pharaoh's shul when he's in town. He's a massive Talmud Chacham, and he told me, and I put it into my book, Rabbi Yoel, the book of Rabbi Yoel that I just came out with. That Rabbi Yoel learned with him Gemara in 1964 for every week, several times a week, and he said he could see from his learning that he was a genius and that he knew Shas. That's what he told me. Is he right? Is he wrong? Ask him, and who knows? But so that's what I said. So a Lubavitcher, who's a massive Talmud Chacham, massive, but he's also very wild, and that's why he never was able to hold a job as a Rosh Yeshiva. He's too sharp. He has a very, very sharp tongue. So he calls me up, and he's older, but we know each other. When I was in yeshiva, 17 years old, he was like 20, 21. He was an older bacher. So we know each other, So he says, listen, I don't know your crowd, so therefore I'm not criticizing you. That was his excuse. But he says, anyone, you quoted another Lubavitcher who also said that Rabbi Yoel was a great genius in Gemara and Nigla. He says, you're being apologetic. And he starts giving it to me. He says, that's the way you talk to the literature. With the literature, you talk T-O-T, and he says, the issue is you guys, he's saying to me and most Lubavitchers, you can't argue it out because you don't know so much Nigla. You know, but you don't know. Basically what he's saying is you don't know what I know. And I have no problem looking them, and he can. He can shoot down anybody. He knows so much. He knows much Nigla, and he can level you. So, but that style, that's what?
Who are you speaking about now?
I don't want to say. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to tell you. I'm just a Lubavitcher who called me from a different country. He called me, he says, I have to call to tell you that I heard this and my blood was boiling. You got my blood boiling. It's like he called me from very far away, okay? And he had to tell me that what he heard, he says, I'm not blaming you because I don't know who you're talking to. So maybe for those people you're talking to, you have to say what you said. But one of the rabbis, Lubavitch, you quoted to support how Rabbi Yoel Kahn knows Gemara is apologetic. You don't have to apologize to anybody. Now that's might be true. But you have to be on that level to be able to have a good debate and argue. And number two, that's not the way to bring a Yid closer to Chassidus, to the Rebbe, to Torah. That's not the way you're going to get it. It's an argument, you might win the argument but lose the war, right? Well, that was the expression. So the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe in particular took the Baal Shem Tov's message, and he needed to find a way of how to impact the Litvische world. And what he came up with is Chabad. Why? Because the Litvaks feel very comfortable in an intellectual world. Chabad is the group of Hasidim that are in the intellectual dome of understanding everything. As you guys see, we learn these Maimonim. These aren't, you gotta keep, in and out and backwards and forwards and this level and that level and why, right? So the Litvaks, although they didn't learn Hasidus, but they had a respect. They had a big respect. I'm not talking about initially their opposition was because they were fearful that Hasidim and Chabad are another cult. Once that was removed, like for example, I told you in the 1900s, from 1900 to 1940, you could say pretty much there was a great respect between the Litvische community, Rab Chaim Oizer, the Chofetz Chaim, the Or Sameach, the Baruch Ber Leibovich, all of them Litvische, all of them. And they had a very good relationship with Hasidim in general, and Chabad in particular. Why? Because they saw that the concerns of 200 years ago are unfounded. I'll just give you an example. When I had the Chabad house in Marin County, right? So the neighborhood, it was a planned neighborhood, 538 homes. They got upset and they took the county to court for granting us permission, and it was a whole balagan. I've told you about it. What was their concern? Fear of the unknown. What's that word? There's a word in English for it. I forget now. Does anyone remember the word in English for fear of the unknown? It'll come to me later. And on any little thing that happened, they blew it up. Oh, Chabad's going to have 150 people come with cars. It's going to take away the parking places for the swim team mothers and the soccer moms. And then the lawyer for the county said to them, guess what? Chabad's more entitled to those parking places than you are because they're a religion and the American Constitution supports religion. And they have a priority over those spots Saturday morning. The fact is, we didn't even have. If one or two people came by car, they parked a block and a half, 2 blocks away, so no one should see them coming out of the car. And most of our people were Shomer Shabbos. So it's the unknown, the fear. So the Baal Shem Tov comes along, the Alter Rebbe brings it into Seichel. This is why it's so important to not just learn Chassidus with faith. This is this and this is that, and shake your head and give a shekel and drink a l'chaim and go to the Rebbe once a year and you're in. No. The Alter Rebbe said that Teiras Baal Shem Tov needs pnimius. And as we've been learning in the Maimorim of Elul, the whole idea of Elul is Bakshuv Ponai es Ponecha Hashem Avakesh. It's all about pnimius. Okay, now Hillel wanted to say something.
I just had a question back when you were talking about the Yerushalmi Jew. Suddenly occurred to me that I don't know, even though I practice it. Was the Gartel specifically a Chasidic innovation? I know that there's an idea of Hakana for Tefillah, and there's an idea that's connected to the idea of girding your loins and so on. But was it a practice before Hasidus?
No and yes, meaning to say the outer wearing of a gartel on top of your shirt or on top of your jacket, that's a Hasidic practice. Because today we do have some Litvisha people who do wear a gartel, but under their jacket. You've never seen that?
I've seen that, yeah. I've been curious about it.
Right. So why? They're not wearing on the outside because they're not Hasidic. But the Shulchan Aruch says that there's another reason, Hillel, for the gartel is to separate between the upper and the lower parts of the body. And when you say tefillah, well, now technically by wearing a shirt or even an undershirt and underwear, there's a separation. But say for example, someone comes to shul in one of those the Indian people, the Pakistanis, they wear that whatever they call those,
Right.
There you would need to have, and if there's nothing under that, you need to have a gartel halachically. If not, it's a violation of halacha because there's no separation between the upper and the lower. But the practice, and why is it Chasidic? But Chasidim took these things and kind of they were proud of it, so they put it on the outside. So technically, you don't have to put it on the outside, but it was a sign of that this is special to us. This is special. Yoni, I think you wanted to say something earlier. No, okay, I don't know what's going on. What are you saying, Yoni?
Well, the kids are home, so there's noise. I just wanted to close the door. So the question is, so if you're saying like this is like the Yom Tov basically of Chassidus. I mean the inception and everything. So what's the whole thing of Lag Baimer? I thought the whole thing of Lag Baimer with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, that he was the father of Chassidus, and that was a Yom Tov.
Stop. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is the father of Kabbalah, not Chassidus. Chassidus does not equal Kabbalah. Kabbalah doesn't equal Chassidus. Although Chassidus uses Kabbalistic language and ideas, but that's not Hasidism. And the basic difference is Kabbalah is very abstract. It's what I call the pipelines of Judaism, of Torah. In other words, the right is Chesed, the left is Gvura. So that's a pipeline. That's a sign. Why that is. That's not, Kabbalah doesn't explain why is Chesed the right and Gvura the small, the left. That's where Hasidus, and particularly Chabad, uses seichel, logic, and misholim and parables and to elaborate and explain those things. So the answer to your question in brief is that the Reb Shimon is the father of the Kabbalah, of the Zohar, etc., not Hasidus. Yoini, this is I'm glad you asked, but do you follow or you're still not clear?
Yeah, no, I follow. It's just so interesting that how on Lag Baimer, it's it's become only a Hasidic holiday. You don't see Litvaks, really into it at all. Like Maron, it's 90-something% either Sephardim,
right,
Chabad.
Right.
So you see a lot of Litayim actually now.
Yeah, you see more Litayim, but he's right. He's right. I don't think the Rosh Hashiva of Panovich are running to Lag B'Omer in Iran. You know what I'm saying? In other words, there's two things for that. I mean, one is, there are some. Not the Vilna Gaon did not deny the kedusha of the Zohar, but there's a whole question: who wrote the Zohar? Okay, and there is a group. It's more in the Yekishe, Washington Heights, German Jewry that denies the authorship of the Zohar to be to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. How do I know this? I heard it from a Washington Heights counselor when I was in Camp Magen Avram in 1977 as a co-counselor. I told you that story. That how I got that job. I don't want to go into the details, but I was able to use my brains to get the job in a Litvische camp. And I had a co-counselor from Washington Heights, a very nice guy, still remember who he was. And he was telling me that, sorry, we don't accept the Zohar to be attributed to Reb Shimon. So we believe in Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, because the Gemara says Zatana. We can even believe in the Zohar, but to say that we know for sure that he wrote the Zohar, sorry chap, that we don't agree with. So there is that element also in the Ashkenaz world. And number two, the whole idea of running to Kfarim, it's only recent that the Ashkenaz Litvische world have made going to Kfarim, celebrating the Patira of their Rosh Hashivas, and they've made it into like the Chasidim make it into it, where it becomes an entire episode, an event that used to not be that way. It wasn't that way. It doesn't mean they didn't bury their people and say a eulogy. Of course they did, but it all came like from the Torah. In other words, what did he contribute to Torah? So they made a hesped about Torah. The whole idea of kedusha and saying tehillim and crying. I don't know. It wasn't as formal. So the whole idea of running to Miran is a foreign is contrary to the way their ancestors taught them.
Well, also there's a shaila in the Litvische world whether it's bittul Torah to take time away from the being in the base medrash to go to
right. Yeah, but Hillel, it's only a shaila if you consider going to a mitzvah, mace mitzvah. Okay, exactly. That's the point. The point is, that they look at it as if someone else can go, then for us it's bittul Torah. The way Chasidim and many other Jews look at it, no, it's a mitzvah for us to go. Even the fathers can go. I want to participate because this is a Adam Gadol and a Adam Chashuv, and so it's again like you're right. It's a different mahalach. It's a whole different approach. So anyway, on Elul, Velvel, Avi. On Elul, there's a famous vart of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's. It goes like this. Elul brings a Chayos in the avoda of Elul. Elul brings vitality and enthusiasm in the service of Elul. Another version is Elul brings Chayos in the avoda of Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li. Our Rebbe explained this once at great length, the difference of the two versions, but the commonality of the two is that today begins 12 days before the Rosh Hashanah, and each day corresponds to a month in the past year. So b'pashtus, it means that we have to make a cheshbon for each month, what we did. So today, Elul, we would make a cheshbon for last Tishrei. Tomorrow, Yutas Elul is for cheshbon, on and on and on. But what's the idea of bringing Chayos and Elul? And that is, we've been talking till this Maimer, we finished Anila Doidi, that the avodah of Elul is avodah satshuva, and we have to go out to the field to greet the king and right now. That's not it's exciting initially to go into the field, to get out of the city. I'm back here in Borough Park, and everyone has come back. I wish they would stay for another month in the country. There's no park. It's horrendous. It's mamish. I tell my wife that I get sick from driving a half a block. The noise, the sirens, the cars. There's no parking. I already got 2 tickets. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm coming from Florida.
Oh my God.
What?
Hashem is talking to you. He wants you to do some exercise, Rabbi.
Oh, that's what my wife says. You can leave my things there. Yeah. You're right, Yoni. You're right. But anyway, so when you leave a city and you go into the country, to the field, and it's this way too, in Eretz Yisrael, when you leave Bet Shemesh and go out, it's a different experience, and that's true. However, then when you realize that the king, you got to talk to the king, you got to ask him, you have to be involved. Then it gets a little murky, really, do I want that? And so it's very easy to fall into not a depression, but a melancholy. You're frustrated. You're not happy. So comes along the day of Elul, you have to do the avodah of ani ledoidi v'doidi li with Chayos. Chay means Chayos. Chayos means excitement. You could say the same thing, Chevra, but you could say it like, it's this way. I could talk to you this way, Or I can talk like this and make with my hands and with my eyes and my face and a smile and a tear. It's a whole different experience. Chayos, life, Chay Elul. This is the life of Elul. Because if you want the avodah of Elul to be penetrating, you need to be Chay. You need to be alive. People love being around people who are alive. It doesn't mean you have to be a screamer. It doesn't mean you have to be a jokester. But just be alive, And this is the message from today's day for the next 12 days. And I think this is something that's workable. Whatever we do, from the emergency room and where Velvel does many surgeries and other, and to learning and teaching, Chai, be alive, so that when someone sees you, someone who's so not well, and the doctor comes in, if the patient sees in the doctor Chayos, that itself brings more health to the patient. And even if you'll argue, the patient's under anesthesia, he doesn't know, he's alive, he's breathing, right? So the person inside feels that there's someone standing here who gives me Chayos, and that's why Nebuch patients who are in a coma, it's so important to speak to them and sing to them and be with them in a Chayos way. They don't respond. Let Hashem deal with that. We know that there's life until the last moment, and therefore, if you're there, bring Chayos to them. And how do you bring Chayos? By you yourself being Chay. There's a concept in Chassidus, Hillel, called Chay Lahachios. Alive to enliven. If you're Chay, you can do Lachios. You can make something else alive. If you're not Chay, you never will create Chayos, Lachios, and something else. And the same is true. You come to the Shabbos table, right? Come to the Shabbos table, and we're going to Slichas and Mitzvah, right? If you're alive, your kids see it. Whether they're plugged in as you are, it makes no difference. They see a living organism of Yiddishkeit, of Frumkeit, of Chassidishkeit, whatever. They see someone who's animated. The animated spirit is such a wonderful spirit, and people love being around animated people. So this is a simple message from today. That Chay Elul, where it brings a Chayos, especially through the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the holy Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. And although we didn't learn anything in the Maimer, we'll start the Hashem next Monday, B'li Neder, and we'll cover as much as we can. The Maimer is from Likutei Torah, so if you don't have the Chassidus Muve'eres, try to get the Likutei Torah, and you'll find the Maimer there on Parshas Nitzavim. If you do have Chassidus Muve'eres, it's the next Maimer on page Lamed Tes that follows this Maimer. And you find Avi. Avi, I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks. Say something, Avi. Hello?
Well, I try to keep the mute off so I don't make, the mute on so I don't make noise or there's no background noise that disrupts the class. It's so good to see you. It was a week and a half or so of seeing the grandchildren and taking them around, because once they start school, it's not going to happen so fast. So when I could get in, I got in. Good to see you working on Elul, working very hard. Baruch Hashem, it was good mimer.
Baruch Hashem. And David should bench everyone here to have a ksiva teva. Good gebenched year, maybe written and inscribed for a good year. Lashona teva musuka. The Rebbe always said to have Lashona teva, good year, umesuka. A sweet year, not just a good year, a sweet year with lots of honey, lots of embellishment of goodness. And when we go to Slichas, b'moitzoi menucha, kidam menucha, tchila. Moitzoi menucha, this coming Shabbos, Matzah Shabbos, Moitzoi Shabbos is Slichas. In Lubavitch they would say, Metanz tarayin and Slichas, they would dance into Slichas, because they would fabreing before, and they said L'chaim. So they just didn't walk into shul, drowsy so late at night. They were farbringing, and then they were so animated they danced into slichas. So we should all dance into slichas with a happiness that the Eibishter gives us opportunity to be moichel us and to accept us for another year. Have a great Shabbos, everyone. We'll see everyone on Monday. Zay gesund. Bye bye.